Have you noticed how driving rules seem to change overnight these days? One minute, everything feels normal, and the next, there's a brand new regulation that could leave thousands of older drivers confused, stressed, and in some cases facing unexpected fines. And if you're over 60 and still driving regularly, this is something you absolutely need to hear today because a new DVLA-related rule is starting tomorrow, and many people still don't fully understand what it means for them. Now, before you panic, this isn't about taking away everyone's license or forcing older drivers off the road. In fact, many pensioners are among the safest and most careful drivers in the country. But the problem is that new systems, updated checks, and stricter enforcement measures are catching people out simply because they didn't realize something had changed. And sadly, when the DVLA sends notices or updates out, a lot of drivers either miss them, misunderstand them, or assume they don't apply. That's exactly why today's video matters, because if you ignore this update, even accidentally, it could lead to penalties, delays, license issues, insurance complications, or fines that many pensioners simply cannot afford right now. And with the cost of living still hitting retirees hard, the last thing anyone needs is extra stress over paperwork or driving rules. So stay with me, because in this video we're going to break everything down in plain English, explain who this affects most, what changes start tomorrow, what you should double check immediately, and the simple steps that could help you avoid a very expensive mistake. And trust me, one small detail is catching thousands of drivers completely off guard. Now let's get into it. Over the last few years, driving regulations across the UK have slowly become stricter, more digital, and far less forgiving than they used to be. A lot of older drivers remember a time when renewing documents was straightforward, local offices handled problems quickly, and most issues could be sorted out with a simple phone call. But today, things work very differently. Much of the system has moved online, notifications are easier to miss, and deadlines are being enforced more aggressively than before. For many pensioners, that creates a real problem, not because they're irresponsible drivers, but because the system itself has become harder to navigate. And when changes happen quietly, many people only discover there's an issue after receiving a warning letter, a penalty notice, or worse, finding out their insurance is invalid after an incident. What's making headlines right now is the growing concern around updated DVLA compliance checks and vehicle record requirements that are beginning to affect more drivers from tomorrow onward. Authorities are increasing enforcement around license details, vehicle tax status, medical reporting obligations, and driver information accuracy. While some of these rules technically existed already, the enforcement is becoming much stricter, and that's the part many people didn't expect. For example, thousands of drivers across the UK still have outdated addresses on their license. Some moved years ago and simply forgot to update the DVLA. Others assumed updating the address with the bank or local council was enough, but the DVLA treats this very seriously. If your license has incorrect information, you could face penalties even if you didn't intentionally break any rules. Now imagine this situation. A pensioner moves to a smaller home after retirement. Life gets busy. There are medical appointments, rising bills, family responsibilities, maybe caring for a partner. Updating the driving license slips their mind. Then an important DVLA notice gets sent to the old address. They never receive it. Weeks later, they discover there's now a fine or compliance issue attached to their record. That's happening more often than people realize. And another major area causing concern is medical declarations. Many older drivers are completely honest and responsible about their health, but confusion over which conditions must be reported is creating real anxiety. Some drivers wrongly assume that if their GP knows about a condition, the DVLA automatically knows too. That's not always the case. Others fear reporting medical conditions because they worry it means instantly losing their independence and their license. But the reality is more complicated than that. In many situations, reporting a condition doesn't automatically stop someone from driving. The DVLA may simply review medical information, request further checks, or issue shorter-term renewals. But failing to report a condition that legally requires disclosure can create enormous problems later, especially if there's an accident involved. And this is where many pensioners feel trapped. Driving isn't just about convenience. For millions of older people, it represents freedom, dignity, independence, and connection to everyday life. It means being able to visit family, attend appointments, do shopping independently, and avoid isolation. Losing access to driving can completely change someone's daily life, especially in rural areas where public transport is unreliable or limited. That emotional side of this conversation often gets ignored. Politicians and officials talk about regulations, enforcement, and compliance, but many pensioners hear something very different. They hear uncertainty, they hear fear, they hear another reminder that getting older sometimes feels like constantly proving you're still capable. And honestly, that's why these updates upset so many people. Because older drivers often feel unfairly targeted when the vast majority are careful, experienced, and responsible behind the wheel. Many have decades of accident-free driving experience. They drive slower, take fewer risks, and avoid dangerous behavior that's common among younger drivers. Yet, despite that, many still feel like they're under growing scrutiny. Now, another issue beginning tomorrow involves increased automatic checks linked to vehicle taxation, MOT records, and insurance databases. Technology now allows authorities to cross-reference vehicle information extremely quickly. In the past, some issues might have taken months to flag up. Today, systems can detect discrepancies almost instantly. And unfortunately, some pensioners are discovering problems they didn't even realize existed. A common example is direct debit failures for vehicle tax payments. Someone changes banks, replaces a card, or experiences a banking error, and suddenly the vehicle tax payment stops without them noticing. Weeks later, enforcement notices appear, and drivers are shocked because they believed everything was being paid normally. Insurance details are another growing issue. Some older drivers unknowingly invalidate their insurance by failing to update medical information, mileage details, or vehicle usage changes. Others mistakenly believe automatic renewals guarantee continuous cover, only to discover a payment failed or policy terms changed. And the consequences can be severe. Driving without valid insurance, even accidentally, can lead to major fines, points on a license, increased future premiums, or vehicle seizure. For pensioners already struggling with household bills, that kind of financial hit can be devastating. What's especially worrying is how quickly small mistakes now escalate. Years ago, there was often more flexibility. Today, enforcement systems are heavily automated. Notices are generated quickly. Penalties are processed faster, and many older people feel they're being expected to navigate a modern digital bureaucracy that changes constantly. Some pensioners don't regularly check emails. Others aren't comfortable using government websites. Some struggle with passwords, online forms, or digital verification systems. Yet more and more essential driving-related tasks now rely on exactly those systems. That creates a dangerous gap, because the people most likely to miss important updates are often the same people most vulnerable to the consequences. And this is exactly why so many experts are urging over-60s to review their driving documents immediately before tomorrow's changes fully take effect. Not because everyone is suddenly at risk, but because prevention is far easier than dealing with penalties later. Now let's talk about license renewals, because this catches a huge number of people every single year. Once drivers reach 70 in the UK, licenses must be renewed every 3 years. The process itself is usually free, but many pensioners either forget renewal dates or misunderstand the rules. Some believe the DVLA will automatically renew everything. Others assume their license lasts longer than it actually does. Driving with an expired license, even unintentionally, can create major complications. And what makes this more frustrating is that many older drivers are still perfectly safe to drive. They simply missed paperwork or misunderstood a deadline. That's why checking license expiry dates matters so much right now. And while we're talking about this, let me say something important. Please don't interpret this video as fear-mongering or an attack on older drivers. Quite the opposite. The reason these conversations matter is because pensioners deserve clear information before problems happen, not after. Too many people only learn about rules once they've already been fined. Too many older drivers feel embarrassed asking for help understanding online systems. Too many families assume parents or grandparents already know the latest requirements when they actually don't. And honestly, there's no shame in finding modern bureaucracy confusing. Even younger people struggle with these systems sometimes. But staying informed today can save enormous stress tomorrow. Another area generating concern involves eyesight requirements. As we age, vision naturally changes. Many drivers responsibly wear glasses, attend eye tests, and adapt perfectly well. But failing eyesight can sometimes develop gradually without people fully realizing how much their vision has deteriorated. Authorities are paying closer attention to road safety concerns involving eyesight, and drivers are legally responsible for ensuring they meet required vision standards. Now, this doesn't mean older people suddenly become dangerous drivers overnight. That's not true. But it does mean regular eye tests are becoming increasingly important, especially for anyone driving frequently. And here's something many viewers may not realize. If your eyesight no longer meets legal standards and you continue driving, insurance complications could arise after an accident, even if the accident itself wasn't directly caused by vision problems. That's why experts keep encouraging older drivers not to delay eye appointments. And unfortunately, with NHS delays and rising costs, some pensioners postpone checkups longer than they should. But prevention matters. Catching problems early often means simple corrections, updated glasses, or small adjustments rather than major issues later. Now, let's talk about something emotional that many families avoid discussing. There comes a point in some people's lives where driving genuinely becomes more difficult. Reaction times change, confidence drops, night driving becomes stressful, busy roads feel overwhelming, and that conversation is incredibly hard because giving up driving can feel like giving up part of your identity. Many pensioners fear becoming dependent on others. They worry about loneliness, isolation, and loss of freedom. Some fear being treated differently by family members. So instead of discussing concerns openly, people sometimes ignore warning signs longer than they should. But there's an important difference between supporting safe driving and unfairly stereotyping older drivers. Age alone does not determine driving ability. There are people in their 80s who drive brilliantly and people in their 30s who drive recklessly. Safety depends on the individual. That's why regular self-awareness matters more than assumptions. And if you're watching this right now and thinking, I'm fine, I've driven for 50 years, that experience absolutely counts for something. But it's still worth checking your documents, reviewing your eyesight, and making sure everything is up to date because these systems are becoming stricter whether people like it or not. Now, something else many viewers have mentioned recently is confusion around scam messages pretending to be from the DVLA. This is extremely important. Scammers know older drivers worry about fines and license problems, so fake text messages and emails have become increasingly common. Some claim there's an urgent fine. Others say a license is about to expire. Some ask for payment details immediately. Please be careful. The panic created by these new rule changes can make people more vulnerable to scams because fraudsters rely on fear and urgency. Never rush to click suspicious links. If you receive unexpected messages about penalties, license problems, or payments, verify everything through official channels first. And if something feels wrong, trust your instincts. Sadly, pensioners are often targeted because scammers assume older people may be less confident with digital systems. That alone is disgraceful, and it's another reason why clear information matters so much. Now let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture here. Why are these driving rules and enforcement systems becoming stricter? Part of it is road safety. Part of it is automation. Part of it is the government modernizing systems. And part of it is simply that technology now allows authorities to monitor compliance more efficiently than ever before. But for ordinary drivers, especially pensioners, it can sometimes feel relentless. Every year brings new rules, updated systems, digital requirements, or enforcement measures. And many retirees already feel overwhelmed by rising costs, changing benefits, healthcare pressures, and financial uncertainty. So when headlines suddenly warn about new driving rules and possible fines, it understandably creates anxiety. That's why staying calm and informed is the best approach, because in most cases, avoiding problems comes down to a few simple checks. Make sure your address is correct. Ensure your license is valid. Confirm your insurance and vehicle tax are active. Keep up with eyesight checks. Understand whether any medical conditions need reporting. And never ignore official notices. Those small steps can prevent huge headaches later. And honestly, family members should help older relatives with this too. If you have parents or grandparents who drive, take a few minutes to ask whether everything is updated properly. Not in a patronizing way, but supportively. Sometimes people are afraid to admit they're confused by online systems. A simple conversation today could prevent serious problems tomorrow. And viewers, this is where I'd like to ask you something important. If you know someone over 60 who still drives regularly, please share this video with them. Seriously, even if they think everything is fine, one overlooked detail could become very expensive later. Sometimes people don't hear about these changes until it's too late, and a quick reminder from family or friends can make all the difference. And while you're here, let me know in the comments whether you think older drivers are being treated fairly these days. Do you feel these rules genuinely improve safety, or do you think pensioners are facing too much pressure and confusion from constant changes? I'd really like to hear your experiences because these conversations matter. One thing that becomes very clear when you read people's stories is how many pensioners feel invisible in modern policymaking. Systems are designed around digital confidence, constant internet access, and fast-moving updates. But millions of older people didn't grow up with this technology, and expecting everyone to adapt instantly simply isn't realistic. That doesn't mean older drivers can ignore regulations, of course, but it does mean clearer communication and better support are needed, because behind every compliance issue is usually a real person trying their best to stay independent and responsible. And for many pensioners, driving is the thread that still connects them to normal life. Without a car, some people become isolated incredibly quickly. Visiting friends becomes harder. Shopping becomes stressful. Medical appointments become complicated. Social lives shrink. Independence fades. That's why these topics carry such emotional weight. They're not just administrative updates. They affect real lives. So if tomorrow's rule changes or enforcement updates worry you, don't panic. Take this as a reminder to double-check everything calmly and carefully. Most issues can be avoided with simple preparation. And remember this too, asking questions is far better than ignoring potential problems. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting clarification, checking official guidance, or asking family members for help navigating online systems. Millions of people are doing exactly the same thing. The important thing is staying proactive rather than assuming everything will sort itself out automatically. Because unfortunately, modern systems rarely give much leeway once penalties begin. And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Older drivers have earned respect, not fear. The vast majority of pensioners on the road are experienced, cautious, and responsible. But the systems around driving are changing rapidly, and staying informed is now part of staying protected. So tonight, before tomorrow's changes begin, take 10 minutes to review your license, insurance, vehicle tax, and personal details. It could save you a massive amount of stress later. And if this video helped you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we regularly cover important updates affecting pensioners, benefits, driving rules, and cost of living changes that mainstream coverage often fails to explain clearly. Take care of yourselves, stay safe on the roads, and I'll see you in the next video.